Hello and welcome back to 1874. It's Friday, so we thought we'd hop on and do a show. It's the drop-in, and today even myself, Dan Bardell, and Jacob Tanswell, the Aston Villa correspondent from The Athletic, are going to look at Villa's squad a little bit and just ask the question, are Villa missing a genuine number 10 in their lineup at the moment? Something I've been thinking about for a few weeks. I'm going to discuss it with Jacob today and see what he thinks as well. This show is sponsored by NordVPN. There's a lot about them in the description, and you'll hear a little bit more about them throughout the show. But there's a huge discount of 4 months free if you use our code 1874.io/NordVPN. Visit that and you'll see what you need to do. It helps you watch the football at a weekend, and it's completely risk-free because Nord offer a 30-day money-back guarantee. Jacob, international break. I know you've been off, but you've jumped on today to do a show with me. How are you?
Doing very well, thank you. Yeah, I've been off, having to use up rest of my holiday until the obviously it expires at the end of the calendar year. So
That must be nice.
it's been good. Yeah, used up the holiday, and also it's, as everyone will tell you in this profession, use it during the international break because that is when you get some downtime, and it's also a very difficult time news-wise to get anything as well. So yeah, it's been good, thank you.
Well, you're the opposite of Greg, because Greg on Monday's show was trying to make out international break, so I'll be really, really busy. So he's gone. He went the opposite way to you. He thought even though it was the international break, he was going to be busy. And I've seen one article from him on The Athletic, but I'm not sure I've seen much else from Global Greg.
How many have you seen of mine as well? I've done 3 this week, so
have you?
3 have come out.
Feel free to rattle through them, Jake. I think I might have seen one. I remember one after the Liverpool game, which I enjoyed.
Yeah,
I didn't enjoy it because we lost, but I enjoyed what you said.
Yeah, we've done Leon Bailey, and that was good. And
Correct.
that's been going up for a while. And yeah,
read that.
And a piece of Morgan Rogers. So maybe for Greg, obviously he's covering a different club now, so maybe he might be quite busy in that respect. But in terms of Villa, it's all very quiet.
Where was the Rogers? Which one? I don't know whether I've seen the Rogers one.
I did it on a couple of days ago now. It was about the tension between not only England under 21s with Morgan Rogers, but also with Philogene as well.
I read all your articles, Jacob, but I only one of them inputted in my brain, which I don't know whether that's probably not a great thing for you.
That's clearly an indictment of that second article, Dan.
Yeah, oh dear. Well, yeah, but anyway, Jacob's done 3 articles, and if you want to support his work, go and look at The Athletic, subscribe to The Athletic. It is a brilliant platform. I use it every single day, and Jacob's an excellent writer, despite the fact I've forgotten his last 2 articles. It's been a busy week. I've been very tired. It's been a long week. Right then, should we get into it? Before we do, actually, let's just talk about England last night quickly. Ollie Watkins on the score sheet, Konsa off at half time, Morgan Rogers making his England debut. So a mixed evening for Villa personnel representing the 3 Lions.
Yeah. Start off with Watkins. I actually think his overall game wasn't brilliant, too far. I don't know what's happened. It's a few times where he received the ball against Greece, and then on the left, channel, and he did the same against Liverpool. And it just seems like he doesn't really want to carry the ball. And it's fair, understandable if he's not, he's a striker that just is concentrating purely in goals. But he has got this background as a left winger, and you just sometimes think, oh, maybe you can remember some of the things you used to do as a left winger sometimes. But he looks a little bit, I don't know, basic without being harsh in possession, but. Hopefully, the goal will do him a world of confidence. And yeah, I thought Rogers looked really composed when he came on. Obviously, he played a big part in one of the goals, and he's obviously a great ball carrier. And yeah, shame about every Konsa, and obviously it compounds the news with Pau Torres as well, who's also got a knock. But although he probably wouldn't have played for Spain anyway because he never plays, just gets called up all the time. So 2 players you hope have knocks, but they shouldn't be too serious.
You'd hope to have them back for Palace then.
Yeah, I'd presume so. That's the issue, really. There's a handful of players that are all doubts, aren't they? You look at Matty Cash, Ross Barkley as well. Obviously, we reported about Jacob Ramsey and Boubacar Kamara being out for a few weeks, so you'd imagine the Palace game might be a little bit too soon for them. So all of a sudden, you've gone from a really full strength, fully fit side to just picking up a few niggles here and there.
Yeah, we're just getting into it, and people are joining us live, so we will go on to our main topic very shortly. But whilst people are joining us live, I might just, what I'll do, Jacob? I might just run the NordVPN advert now. Let's get it done. So let's hear a little bit more about NordVPN before we get into our main topic. 1874 is proudly sponsored by NordVPN, so when and you can't watch it, we want to help you. NordVPN is a secure and private service which works on pretty much any device, including your laptop, mobile, television. So if you want to watch some live content, it allows you to appear like you're in another country. And whilst you're connected, no one else can find out what you're doing, including your internet service provider. Beyond this, the service also has threat protection baked in to protect you from intrusive website ads and malware, which is pretty handy for you. As part of NordVPN support 4 months for free, this also includes Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. All you've got to do is go to 1874.io/NordVPN and sign up. All the details are also in the description. As always, we're very grateful to anyone that signs up. We know that money is tight, but if you think NordVPN will help you out, it will also help keep the channel running and help. Right then, thank you very much to NordVPN for continuing to sponsor us. Right then, Jacob, let's talk about the main topic now. Do Villa kind of lack a genuine number 10 in their lineup at the moment? We've seen over the last few weeks, Villa have toiled a bit in front of goal, toiled a bit in terms of making chances, especially in the last 2 games. That the main danger and main threat seem to be set pieces. In the Liverpool game, the game before against Bruges, we could still be playing now, and I don't think we would have scored. It just didn't look like it was going to happen for us over in Belgium. It's something I've been thinking about for a while, and I don't know whether I've mentioned it to you previously. Obviously, we talk outside of doing shows. But do you think Villa lack that genuine number 10? Because we know Emery likes to play with 3 or 4 runners in his side, and stereotypically over the last year and a half, the number 10 has generally been a runner. In Morgan Rogers this season, Diaby last season, although Yuri Tillemans, McGinn, other players have played there in that time. But, if Tillemans is playing there, he's not a genuine number 10. Morgan Rogers playing there at the moment, he's not a genuine number 10 either, although it has worked well there with those players in those positions at various times. Buendia is the only natural number 10 in the squad, I would say. Mm-hmm. He's making his way back from injury. Emery has used him very sparingly this season. I have a feeling in the back of my mind that maybe Villa have moved on in the 12 months since he's been out, and he maybe isn't part of plans. I've done some maths and looked at the 20-man squad when everyone's fit, and I'm not sure in Emery's mind he would get on the bench even when everyone is fit in that 20-man squad. But that's just my opinion and what I think Emery's thinking. I could be wrong with that. So I'm giving you loads to go on there, Jacob. I probably mentioned everything that we're going to mention in this show just in that question. But after I've said all that, do Villa just not have a genuine number 10, and do they need one?
Yeah, I think there's a few factors to consider, really. I think Villa don't really play with one number 10. They play with 2, right? So they have the one behind the striker, and then they play as the left winger is essentially the 10 in possession. So, and the width, as we know, comes from the left back. Secondly, football's evolved. So from 89 years ago, number 10 was in vogue as a fashion, wasn't it? An actual, out and out number 10. Every team played 4-2-3-1. Your Mesut Ozils, Wesley Schneiders. These were number 10s, that could drift anywhere they wanted. They didn't have to press. They didn't have the tactical responsibility out of possession, in possession. They could do what they wanted. And a lot of the attacking schemes were centered about off-the-cuff moments and basically giving these number 10s license to do what they wanted. Now, the number 10, there's not really an out-and-out 10 anymore because systems are more fluid. Unfortunately, in my opinion, attacking systems are a bit more choreographed and structured, so you don't have that off-the-cuff license anymore. You even see, like, for example, probably Martin Odegaard 8 years ago would be considered as out-and-out number 10. Yeah. Nowadays, you see him in that right side channel as a number 8 in a 4-3-3. You might see him sometimes on the left. He doesn't play as an out-and-out 10, and I think it's not a simple case of just saying I really haven't got a 10, because really, a 10 doesn't exist anymore. They've got to be very flexible, and that's why Unai Emery loves John McGinn or Rodgers there, because they can play in multiple positions depending on who they're playing against and target certain areas of the pitch. I think the number 10 now is probably who can you be that creative guy who can unpick low blocks, and we saw against Bruges, like you're completely right in saying, Dan, Villa didn't have that anyone that could thread the ball through. We've got a lot of really good ball carriers and ball runners. And, considering Emery about 6 months ago said, our next step as a team is to break down low blocks. You can't have, ball carriers pretty useless when they haven't got any space to carry the ball into. So, I do think Villa need that type of player that's got a bit more guile. I wouldn't say he's a number 10, but that can unpick low blocks. And you probably say right now, the only player you could say suited is Yuri Tillemans.
Yeah, and even, he's not a natural number 10. No. As I said earlier, I think when I'm talking about a number 10, I agree with everything you've said about the way number 10s are used now. I'm talking more the kind of profile of of player. Grealish was a number 10, but he played on the left mainly for Villa. But in Emery's system, I think he'd be classed as a ball carrier, although he is a very creative player as well. You've just kind of talked about it as well. We don't have that player who's going to provide that little bit of flair, see a pass that no one else is going to see in that number 10 position. Tielemans is the closest, I would say, to that. And maybe as the season goes on and Kamara gets fit again, that you've got some games where you may play Tielemans there, and he's played there in the big games in the past. But Emi Buendia is the only one in the squad I would say they have. But as I said earlier, when I decided to talk about the whole show in 5 minutes, he's not being used at the moment, is he?
No, and what I would love is if you could just pick up that Emi Buendia that went on tour to the States last year pre-injury and drop him here. He probably would be a fantastic fit because he looked really sharp. Like you say, he's probably the only out-and-out proper 10 that's played there all his career. That would be absolutely fantastic there. But at the same time, how you play and how, for example, Morgan Rogers is in that role now. He either has to be really good in one of the attacking strengths. So Rogers' ball carrying is his best strength. What is Buendia's real best strength at the moment? It's not probably his ball carry. It's not his sharpness. His final ball's not there either. And in that position, you've probably got a split second to think on your next decision. So if you're not sharp enough or quick enough or skillful enough, you get found badly lacking. And I think you saw that when Buendia came against Bruges, against those type of teams where you're really relying on him.
But without playing, I'm just playing devil's advocate here. Buendia isn't going to get back up to speed. He isn't going to get back to the player that he was. We're not going to give him that chance to get back to that level. And you're right to talk about pre-season. I thought Buendia was actually a really big miss last season. I'm not saying he would have started every week, but I think he'd almost have been used as the 11th, the 12th man in the team. He'd have been so useful to bring on in games 60, 70 minutes and be a finisher. How's he going to get back to that level if we don't ever use him? He's coming on for 6-7 minutes here and there. And I'm not saying Emery's doing the wrong thing. I'm just asking the question.
I think he needs that big moment, doesn't he? That's not come yet. He needs that moment where he'll come on for 7-8 minutes and he produces something. So he produces that pass, for John Duran or Watkins, and then you can all of a sudden get that momentum and you can start thinking, and will start convincing Emery to give him more minutes, and then it'll be that way. But the way it's going at the moment is he's getting his chances. In cup games. He was pretty quiet in the cup defeat to Crystal Palace, and he's going through these games kind of floating. You don't really see much of him. He's not making that real big statement of intent. I think the way it's going with Buendia, I think you're completely right. Something a rabbit needs to be pulled out of the hat, and it's the 7-8 minutes he's getting. So really convince people that he's actually back on the level. Emery keeps saying he's showing more in training. He's getting back to his best, but I think that now needs to be translated onto the pitch. But like you say, he's going to get so few opportunities, and he'll probably be reduced to 5 minutes at most when he does come on.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not saying it's the wrong thing playing Rogers there because he's had some brilliant moments this season. As I've said, I think Tielemans can play there in this system as well, and I think he will. I think Rogers has had moments where actually he has played some really incisive through balls, and he played a great ball last night, although he's playing kind of as a left winger for England last night. But he showed that side of his game has come on. But in recent weeks, it feels like he's held onto the ball too long. He's running to cul-de-sacs a little bit, and that's been a problem. That's where I'm watching Villa and thinking, I do wish at certain times we did have like a more orthodox number 10.
Yeah, and also I think it depends on the movement in front of you, right? So even if you had probably the best number 10 against Bruges, he probably wouldn't have come out with the pass because the movement ahead was absolutely atrocious. There was nothing, and this is where it could be whether you decide on if Emery's fantastic system is too choreographed or it's just the right amount, because there's points in the last couple of games where you just think, you would like to see a bit more invention or a bit more variety. How about the right back provides the width and the left back tucks in something just slightly different? But if you have this number 10 and you have winning runners, then really in theory Emery's system should work most times and not. I think if you had that Leon Bailey back at his best, and then that's the thing. You saw it yesterday, the England game. Madueke gets to the byline, he sets up Watkins. You just think that's what Bailey was doing loads last year. And if he does that again, then the need for a number 10 isn't quite as pressing, is it?
Yeah, we're not scoring the types of goals that we were scoring under Emery for 2 years. Really, that goal for Watkins last night, it literally was a carbon copy of the goal that we were scoring last season, the half a season before when Emery comes in. Those kind of things don't seem to be really happening at the moment, and he's a little bit frustrated. Just going to involve some people in the chat here because we've had some interesting comments thrown up whilst we've been on air. Big Billy Biff here. Sorry, Billy Biff. I don't know why I added a big in front of your name. I don't know whether you are big. I don't know. I mean, it might be that might catch on. Billy Biff here, or Big Billy Biff, as I know him. It says Rogers should go back on the left. Number 10 is not working for him. I do think there's a world in the Palace game where perhaps Maatsen plays left back and provides the width from that side, because I think we do need to change something. As good as Luca Dean's been, Tielemans does go to the 10, and I can see Rogers going back to that left number 10 role, because then he's driving from the left-hand side rather than driving centrally, and I feel there's less chance of him running into those cul-de-sacs that I mentioned earlier, and there's more space if he's playing on the left and Maatsen's kind of occupying people by creating that overlapping run as well.
Yeah, but I don't think the space is the biggest issue for Roger. I think he's got into a few good positions.
Okay.
Away to Anfield, to Liverpool, he got into a good position. I just think you're right. It's the final ball, and that disconnect is the bigger issue. And I think what Emery's point of view would be is if we keep changing where he's playing, then the disconnect could probably be even bigger. He did play left 10 first half against Bruges, didn't he? And was overlapping him there, and I think and him and McGinn swapped to half time. So obviously there's something that Emery's still receptive to. It's just he doesn't do it as much. And when it did actually happen, it wasn't that great. But I think Rodgers can play anywhere, but I would prefer him to be in that number 10 if you are going to play him, because he's dribbling the ball to central areas and he'll have more passing options rather than coming in off the left onto his right foot, and he's kind of just going one way. He can go left and right when he's in the middle of the pitch, if that makes sense. But I listened to your podcast the other day with Greg about that Maatsen Luca Dean debate, and I think there's something to be said there. I think there's an argument to say that Maatsen could be introduced earlier in games, maybe. But I think because Luca Dean's so steady at the moment, he's one of the steadier performers in that team in recent weeks. So it'll be a big decision. But yeah, I think the balance needs to be addressed on both flanks.
Yeah, obviously, look, it's not working at the moment. Greg and I did a podcast on Monday, as Jacob just said, and all the attacking players are not at their optimum level or anywhere near their optimum level at the moment, and it's all happened at the same time, which is not great. It's unfortunate for Villa, and unfortunate for us, and unfortunate for Unai Emery. Big Ronan Ward here in the chat as well. Big Jacob Tanswell. Emery targeted his ideal 10 João Felix during the summer, but unfortunately, it never materialised. Hopefully he has another target up his sleeve in January. We won't get fully into transfers now, because we know that's a kind of a web of everything, and we don't really know what Villa's plans are in January at the moment. But we know there was interest in Felix. In an ideal world, Emery would have bought Felix to Aston Villa. I think one of the things that stopped it was that Chelsea needed to sell Gallagher to Atleti, and to do that they kind of got railroaded into João Felix, and João Felix is sat on the bench most weeks for Chelsea and playing in the Europa Conference League, which is a shame for a player of those talents. Does that kind of show that Emery would have liked to have had that profile of player in his squad to choose?
Yeah, of course. And then, everything was influenced by PSR, right? Maybe in an ideal world, he would have given most of the RB another year and said, let's see what you can do. But because the offer was so good, because it would help with financial fair play, Emery felt he could adapt, and Rodgers can be in that number 10, which is absolutely fine. But you probably would say you would like a little bit more depth, especially for a guy like Rodgers, who's he only signed in January. He's only his first year. It's crazy, and he's only young. Consistency, especially at number 10, is going to be rocky. But yeah, it shows that he did want João Felix. But the question is whether he wanted that position, or just because he loved the player so much, which obviously we know Emery did really like João Felix. That was the reason why he bought him. But yeah, I think January will be interesting. They've got obviously be very mindful of PSR again, but how they navigate and balance the squad as well with a couple of outgoings would be interesting.
Yeah, I like this from Agent Cooper, kind of challenging us. And this conversation is wandering dangerously close to we need someone to provide magic moments. Let's not resort to Gerrard tactics. Emery gets us playing well as a team. We're just out of form at the moment. I think that's probably fair, isn't it? Because last season we scored loads of goals, and I wasn't sat here saying, "Oh, we could do with a genuine number 10 in this squad."
Yeah, but that's where I came back from. The number 10's decisive, and us thinking from the outside that Emery structure's too formulaic and pretty meticulous and doesn't allow too much attack and expansion. Or we think actually it's completely spot on, because in theory, when everything's working and the out of form players are in form, there shouldn't be an issue. But when they're not in form, you can start looking at the system and start thinking, okay, there's a bit more variety. So yeah, completely right. But at the same time, you've got to think, how can you get the best out of your players individually and bring their strengths out whilst playing within the overall system.
Yeah, another one here from Sai AVFC says, I'd like to see Broggio at least train with the first team. He's the one coming through right now. He slaughtered the Fleetwood left back in the Bristol Street Motors. I can tell you that he trains with the first team an awful lot. Most weeks he is training with the first team. Ben Broggio, I know that, and I know the club rate him and are excited about him when you watch him play it without, going hyperbole here. Hyperbole. I can never say that word. Why did I try and say a word that I'm not going to be able to say? Jacob, as a journalist, can you correct me?
Hyperbole and hyperbolic, you can use both.
I was nearly right. I was on the line. I was on the right lines, wasn't I? So I don't know, too over the top, but he does remind me of Jack Grealish when I watch him play. I guess the issue is that you're not going to go just from playing under 21s straight into the Villa first team unless you are absolutely exceptional. And that's no dig at him at all. He hasn't even had a loan yet. Obviously, this season in his development is about playing in the under 21s Champions League, the Youth Champions League. That's a big thing for a lot of Villa's young players. So to start calling for youngsters, it's a little bit what like Agent Cooper just said, like probably a bit over the top at the moment.
Yeah, it's but like you said, the training for the first team will do him a world of good. And I'm actually doing a piece. Well, I'm getting information with a view to a piece on Broggio, and he's done absolutely fantastic. And the way for youth league, he's going through, and the steps are incremental. So even at this point, you're not even thinking about a loan for him. You're thinking about playing that youth league. Getting more games for the 21s. He's still filling out. He's still got a lot of growth to do. He's a similar player like Grealish, but also if you can compare him to a guy that's tried to break through in Tyler Dibbling this season at Southampton, where they're both quite smaller, still got a lot of growing to do. And Tyler Dibbling's technically absolutely brilliant, a bit like Broggio. And also this is this is a team that's bottom of the table, not
it's different levels,
Aston Villa. But even still, Dibbling's been out of the team recently because the physicalities and the intensities can be a struggle. So I think Emery will only blood these players if he's really, really confident in them coming in, because you saw with Omari Kellerman, he's bigger physically than Broggio, a bit older than him, more mature, and there was still reservation about playing him last year. So of course, let him train with the first team, but it'll probably be a few years away yet.
It's one thing that I'm not the man to criticise Unai Emery because I love him, and it's going to sound like I'm criticising him here, and I'm not. I'm just asking a question to try and debate and make a more interesting show. And I think you've spoken about this before. He's been here 2 years. We haven't really seen anyone from the academy come through, but I think there are caveats with that because I think Villa he's progressed Villa so far that it's really hard to put youngsters in, like I say, unless they are absolutely exceptional.
Yeah, we did a piece on the youngsters coming through, and actually got me thinking that probably the only blot on his copybook, if we're being ultra critical, is he's not brought that player in. But you'd hope with time, given this length of his contract, his long-term future here at Aston Villa, there will be someone eventually that comes through. But also the way that you're looking at it is if they're not absolutely top and they can contribute immediately to Villa, you can sell them for PSR purposes, and that's increasingly the way obviously Villa are going. But at the same time, I think what's important is that everyone absolutely loves Unai Emery, and he's the most wonderful man. I think he's probably the second best manager in Europe. I think he's great, but it doesn't mean you have to agree with everything he says. Of course, we're not. None of us can dream of the tactical knowledge or football knowledge he's got. But as just a football fan, you could just think, you know what? I think we could have done something different. So after the Crystal Palace game, I was quite annoyed by the team's selection off the bench. And although Emery would have his reasons for it, you do have a license to say you disagree. It doesn't mean you don't like Emery or you think he's not good enough job. You can say, I would have done this differently. But again, hindsight is a wonderful thing.
Yeah, just like I can criticise a player after a game, but I actually love all of our players.
Yeah.
There's a player in our squad that I don't like, but occasionally they will have a bad game and I'll have to say he didn't play great. He did this wrong. He did this wrong in my opinion. It is how it goes. I like this one as well from James Meakin. He says there were signs last season that we were becoming too reliant on Bailey, just like we were with Jack at one time. Now he's not in form. We are paying the price. I know we've just covered Bailey a little bit. Do you think that's fair?
Yeah, I do. I think with Bailey as well, it's an odd one because without DRB, you've kind of probably only got him as the only profile player like him in the squad. So that's why you're playing him a lot. Even I saw a comment earlier why we playing Bailey a lot. It's because he's the only guy that offers that balance. And without Bailey, all of a sudden you look a bit one-paced. Everyone wants the ball to feet. No one's running in behind apart from Watkins, and you don't really have that 1v1 ability out wide either. So I think you probably were getting a bit too over reliant on him last season, but in the summer as well, given that no one really came in of his similar profile, then you're probably relying on even more this time.
You're just reading between the lines of something you said earlier. So I get the impression that Rodgers as a left 10 isn't going to be something that's going to happen very often. You know, we've got Ramsey and McGinn who can obviously play there as well, who I'm sure Emery would like to get at least one of them in the team at any given time, you would think. But I don't know, I can't remember whether Greg and myself spoke about this in the last show. There is an argument that, you know, Bailey isn't in form at the moment. You know, when Cash is back, let him provide the width from the right hand side and do what he wants to do and overlap. Kamara will be back in the team. He can drop in and make it a three at the back build up. Although Emery did speak about wanting to get away from the three at the back build up. Rodgers goes back as a left number 10, then Tillerman goes as an actual 10. Do you envisage a world where that happens?
He used Matty Cash a few times right wing last year, didn't he? To quite good effect. Yeah. You know, away to Burnley when Cash scored 2 goals. He said he'd been watching Cash in his Nottingham Forest days as a winger. So I think that could be a potential.
Did he actually go back and watch Cash as a winger in the Nottingham Forest days? Do you know? Is that something
he said during that week before he scored the 2 goals against Burnley, he was watching him play for Forest as a right winger.
I mean, this is why I've got no right to ever question anything about Unai Emery, really. The level of detail that guy goes to. Not many managers would do that, would they? The week leading up to a game, just watch old clips of Matty Cash. You probably did watch 90 minutes as well.
Yeah, it's remarkable. You could play Cash there, but at the same point, you probably go into crossing over into territory where you're just like, oh, we just need a stopgap, and you don't really know, Cash as a right winger, if it'll work, and you probably take away a goal threat that side as well. I actually think Ian Maatson could do a job. I know I probably wouldn't want to see him there, but he's played number 10 sometimes in the youth days or in the younger days at Chelsea on loans as well. He could play on right wing, you'd imagine, but it'd take a few weeks, maybe a few months to even think about learning that. So that would be interesting. But again, if Philogene, I know he's not quick and he's not an out winger like we said. If Philogene actually didn't feel like he was playing within himself and could take players on and get to the byline and show that type of maverick risk-taking player that he was against Hull, he'd probably be the best option. So it's just right now he's looking a bit with playing within himself, and that was something that we spoke about a few weeks ago.
It's just we're in such uncharted territory here, having lost 4 in a row. I don't think it should be panic stations.
No, definitely.
You are almost as you as someone that covers Villa, me as someone who covers Villa and supports the club and wants us to do well. I'm not saying you don't want us to do well, by the way. You almost are just searching for something. What's gonna change? Is there anything we can do to change it? It is uncharted territory for us, though, isn't it?
It is, but I think all supporters and all journalists want to think about what should we come up with tactical solutions, and this is great.
Going to care what we think.
Exactly, but we all think that. But when really, I think deep down we all know not much is going to change, and they'll just come out of this bad run of form, and they'll actually be fine. It's just rather than think of let's overhaul everything and throw the baby out with the bathwater. Actually, what we're going to do is just we're going to tweak a few certain things and have big changes. You see that with most coaches in modern football now, where you think, oh, why does he not play 2 strikers up top? Why does he not play do this? When actually the manager will probably just make a few small changes that none of us even notice, and everything goes back to normal. So I'm sure Bailey will keep playing. The team will look largely the same, and all of a sudden Villa will beat Palace 3-0 and everything's fine again.
Is that what you think? Because that's where I'm at, is that I think after the international break, I don't even care about the performance. Just beat Palace and get 3 points on the board. And then I think you go into the Tuesday or Wednesday, I can't remember what day it is, against Juventus, and it'll be like the Bayern game where the atmosphere will be incredible. And I think we then go on and win that game. And then you go away to Chelsea on the Sunday and you're feeling in a much better place. Do you think that's what will happen? Because sometimes I think things, but I can be blind because I'm a Villa fan.
No, I really do think that. I think, that without using the old phrase, class is permanent, and you'll see it with Man City, you'll see it with Arsenal, you see it with Aston Villa. These teams will all bounce back. They're too good not to. They're not in they're not in chaos or free fall like a Manchester United, for example. They've all got a really robust foundation. And when I was interviewing David Villagani last year, the thing that I thought was really interesting that he said is we are building a team that will go through dips in form. Obviously, they didn't come last year, but we've got such solid foundations that we can snap out of it quickly. It's not going to be a long-term rotting. It's going to be a thing where we have a little dip and then we'll come back up because the support network and the foundations are so strong. And I found that really interesting that time, and I was almost waiting to write an article on it last year when Villa were going through a bad run of form, but it never really materialised, and probably only now we're seeing it.
I drove past Vidagani a couple of days ago. I'd love to have been walking and managed to say hello to him, but to be fair, he was on the phone anyway, so I assume he was completing a transfer or something for January, because he's on his phone, so that must be what he's doing, because he has nothing else going on in his life other than Villa. That's the world I live in, where I like to think I've gone past him when he's concluding a big deal. It could have been Morgan Rogers' contract, to be fair, but he was on the phone when I drove past him, and I was like that gif or that meme where DiCaprio's pointing at the TV. I was on my own in the cars. I was like, bit of garden. Just pointing at him. Let's conclude then, Jay. Just to conclude, so what we've come up with is, for the number 10 position, what I've garnered from this show is that not much will change. It's going to be a combination of Rodgers and maybe Tielemans in certain games to play number 10 for Villa.
Yeah, I said it a couple of weeks ago. I would like to see you Tielemans there in certain games, whether you're playing against a deep block or whatever, and especially when you have Kamara and Onana there as well. I think Tielemans would be really good there. I was just reading some of the comments, just on Adam's point where he says United in crisis, yet we're only 3 points ahead. I don't mean right now, but I'm talking about the overall foundation. Man United haven't got the structure that Villa have got in place right now. But going back to Tielemans, I think could be a really good 10, but in all likelihood, you probably keep Rodgers there. I think the left number 10 is going to be really interesting without Ramsey. If you can get McGinn back to his best, and you can have McGinn and Rodgers really working hard between the lines, I think that'll be go a long way to alleviating some of the issues.
Okay then, Rob, thank you very much for joining me on this Friday afternoon, Jacob. Really appreciate it. Always great to have a chat about Villa with you, and you enjoy your last few days of annual leave before you get back on the grind next week. Thanks to those that have been in the chat. Did say me and Jacob would try and do a show once a week. I think it's working doing a show like this where we get people who are watching live involved, so we'll do our best to keep this going. So I do like involving the people who are watching live and seeing what they think and answer questions that come in whilst we're talking about subjects. So Jacob and myself will find a subject every week and we'll just talk around it like we have done today. If you haven't watched Monday's podcast with Greg after the Liverpool game, go back and check that out as well. I'm sure there might be some interesting tidbits in there if you haven't listened to that already. If you're watching on YouTube, like the video, subscribe with your post notifications on, leave a comment, and just be nice in the comments as well. Audio listeners, you know what I'm going to ask for. I'm going to ask for a review on Apple Podcasts, some stars on Spotify as well. If you've enjoyed it, then give us 5 stars on both platforms, and that will really help us. Be back next week with some shows. Keep an eye on our socials to see when things are coming out, and join us live as well if you can when we're on YouTube, because as I say, I enjoy getting you, the audience, involved. Have an excellent weekend with no Villa. I'm sure it will be a good one for everyone. And as ever, I'll end with a big fat up the Villa.